Here's a weird question. How old is your liver, really? Not your birth certificate age, your liver's actual age. Because according to a 2023 Stanford study published in Nature, your organs don't all age at the same speed. One of yours might be aging almost twice as fast as the rest of you. And until recently, there was no way to know which one. Now there is. Scientists can measure it from a single blood draw. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how that works, what it's already revealing about disease risk years in advance, and the specific, research-backed things that have actually been shown to slow this kind of aging down, some of them in as little as 8 weeks. Most of us assume our whole body ages at one steady rate. You're 45, so everything in you is roughly 45 years old. That Stanford study tested that assumption directly, using blood samples from 5,676 people. Using machine learning, researchers analyzed nearly 5,000 proteins in blood plasma and identified which ones came specifically from which organs, proteins that essentially act as a fingerprint for a single organ's condition. Using those fingerprints, they built separate biological age scores for 11 different organs: your heart, brain, liver, kidneys, lungs, muscles, arteries, and a few others. The result: nearly 20% of people had at least one organ aging significantly faster than the rest of their body. Your heart could genuinely test out at a biological age of 35, while your liver, same person, same birthday, tests out at 55. But here's the part that actually matters more than the cool science trick. This isn't just an interesting party fact about your biology. It turns out that gap between organs can quietly predict something much more serious, and it can show up years before you'd ever feel a symptom. A 2024 study in Nature Medicine, led by researcher Pei-Lun Kuo, found that when an organ's biological age runs ahead of your actual age, that gap correlates with higher risk of disease specifically tied to that organ, sometimes appearing years before any symptom would ever show up. I want to be careful with the word correlates here, because it matters. This research shows a strong association, not a guarantee. An aged organ score doesn't mean you're destined for disease in that organ. It means your risk is measurably higher than someone whose organ tested younger. That's a meaningfully different, more honest claim, and good science communicators should say so. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, though. A 2025 study in Nature Aging looked specifically at brain and artery aging, and found it was linked to memory decline and dementia risk. But even people who carried the APOE4 gene, the well-known genetic variant that raises Alzheimer's risk, showed real protective effects when their brain's biological age tested younger than expected for their years. Which raises an obvious question. If your genes aren't fully the deciding factor here, what is? Before we get there, one honest disclaimer worth sitting with for a second. As exciting as this sounds, I want to be upfront. These specific organ clock tests aren't available as a routine test at your doctor's office. This is still research stage science, the kind running in labs and large study cohorts, not something you can order from a lab this week. I'd rather tell you that clearly now than have you leave this video trying to book a test that doesn't exist yet. What we do have, though, is solid research on what actually influences organ aging in general. And some of it will probably surprise you, because it directly contradicts a couple of assumptions almost everyone makes. Here's assumption number 1. Any movement is basically the same for aging. Walking the dog counts just like a real workout. The research says otherwise. Structured, planned exercise, actual training, not just general daily movement, appears to slow biological aging more effectively than casual activity, with measurable effects across muscle, heart, liver, fat tissue, and even the gut. And here's a number worth remembering. One study found that sedentary middle-aged women lowered their epigenetic age by 2 full years after just 8 weeks of combined aerobic and strength training. 8 weeks. 2 years off your biological clock. That's not a small effect for a fairly short time commitment. But before you assume exercise alone is the whole answer, here's the second myth worth busting. Because researchers found that doing just one thing right, even something as good as exercise, isn't enough on its own. A UK biobank study tested this directly and found the strongest anti-aging effect came specifically from combining an anti-inflammatory diet, high physical activity, and good sleep together. Not any single one of those factors in isolation. Diet alone still matters plenty, though. A study of nearly 2,700 women found that improving diet for just 6 to 12 months slowed biological aging by an average of 2.4 years. But it appears to work best as one piece of a combined approach, not a standalone fix. And here's a bonus finding that stung a little when I first read it. People working over 40 hours a week, on average, showed biological aging accelerated by about 2 years, likely tied to chronic stress effects on hormones, DNA, and immune function. So yes, apparently your job can, quite literally, age you. I want to end with the same honesty I started with. Lifestyle changes reduce risk. They don't guarantee an outcome. Genetics, chronic illness, and stress still play a major, sometimes dominant role in how your organs age. Nobody following every one of these habits perfectly is guaranteed a young organ age scorecard. What the research shows is a shift in probability, not a promise. So here's the question I actually want to leave you with. If you could find out the real biological age of each of your organs right now, even if the answer wasn't what you wanted to hear, would you want to know? Let me know in the comments. And if this gave you a clearer picture of how aging actually works, subscribe. I break down what the research really says. No fluff, no fear-mongering. See you in the next one.